Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Today on the slab, the dead fountain pen ready for resurrection, is this 1933 Waterman's No. 3 fountain pen in celluloid called Black Pearl. I found this in a 1933 catalog from Waterman's, and this pen was made in the US. This is a medium-sized fountain pen. Here it is with a Pilot Metro, so it's slightly smaller than a Metro and slightly larger when it's posted. Let's take a look at this beautiful celluloid fountain pen and see what it needs to be resurrected. And here's a spoiler alert. Here's what the pen looks like after completing the restoration. And we'll give you a close-up of the nib and the section after restoration as well. Then you continue watching to see how I did it. It has a flat top finial, a chromed Waterman's clip with a ball end, and Waterman's engraved down the center. This beautiful black, red, and silver celluloid, one silver cap band, a chromed box lever, and it has Waterman's registered US pat off, made in USA, the ideal logo in the center, and fountain pen on the bottom. And the very bottom finial has a No. 3 stamped into it. So that's the model, No. 3. Let's open up the cap and see the section and the nib. You can see that the nib is rather tarnished. It has a little bit of adjustment necessary, maybe, but that is a very flexible vintage gold nib. So it might need some adjustment, but that feed looks like it's too far out from that section. The section itself has lots of wear on it, no deep scratches. And the barrel has lots of scoring where the cap was unscrewed and screwed on over the years, and some gunk on there as well. I don't know whether that's old shellac or what. And there are numerous scratches, but no deep gouges that I can find. The cap band is in place. There's no cracks in the lip of the cap. The clip looks like it's in really good shape. Might need a little bit of a bending. That is clamped in there, so it's not removable, but there's ways of getting that clip to be a little bit more secure. And there's various marks and gouges from years of use. So the first thing I want to do with this 92-year-old pen is get the section off and see whether I can knock out that feed and nib and inspect the barrel. The lever doesn't really function, so I'm sure that there's old desiccated latex on the inside of the barrel. We'll try to make it move first before I apply any heat. Yep, it's moving. There we go. And there's the section, remnants of old sack right there, and the feed on the inside. We can knock that out. And let's look in the barrel. Yeah, there's the old sack is sitting inside there. Maybe you can see it. So I'm going to soak these parts in some pen flush first. In my ultrasonic bath. My homemade pen flush is 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia. And we'll do that for 2-3 minutes and loosen all the old gack and the old ink up, and then we'll see whether we can knock that nib and feed out of there. Okay, so this has been in the bath for several minutes. I got most of the old ink out, I think, and I've run some water through it as well. We'll put it in the smallest slot of my block and get out my rod and my staff. They comfort me. Yeah. And give it a tap. Yeah, and it's budged. Tap it a little bit at a time. That's a long feed. So there we go. There's the section, and there's the nib. I get my loop out. Very faint imprint. It says Waterman's Ideal Reg US Pat Off. That's the register with the US Patent Office. It says 2, and then made in the USA. So there it is, 14 karat gold. See what it looks like over here first, and then we'll see what it looks like when it's polished up. And here's the interesting Waterman feed, but it's typical for the 1930s. Let's put it over here and see what the ebonite looks like before it's shined up, and then we'll look at it afterwards. And there's our section. We'll put it over here. It's not too bad a shape, but we'll polish it up and see what it looks like when we put it over here. And there we are after a couple of minutes of buffing on my buffing wheel, my Dremel buffing tool, and some jeweler's polishing cloth. It looks gorgeous, front and back. There we go, look at that. Brand new, gotta love gold. And here is the section, all polished up. Look at that, shiny all the way around. And there is the feed. Looks like a piano key all shined up. Gorgeous. So now I've had the barrel and the cap sitting in the pen flush ultrasonic bath for a while, and we'll dry that off and see whether we can get the old desiccated sack out of the barrel. And then I'm going to put the nib feed and section back together again and put it back in the barrel to do a writing test, a dip test, to make sure that that nib writes properly before we begin the rest of the restoration and resacking the pen. And here's the barrel out of the bath. You can see that the sack is still in there, so I'm going to take my dental scraper and see whether I can tease out all of that old latex. The bath should have softened some of it, and that lever's still not moving. It's not budging at all. So I don't want to force that. So let's see if we can dig this out of here. It's petrified. So I'll do this off camera. So here we go. All this gack I got out of that barrel. It took me a while. That lever was absolutely frozen in there with old desiccated latex. And now it should be clean as a whistle. Turn on my inspection camera and go inside and take a look. You can see right to the bottom and work that lever, and you can see that it works nicely. There we go. So now I want to put the nib, the feed, and the section together into the barrel so that I can give it a writing test, a dip test, to see whether the nib writes okay or whether it needs any adjustment before I put the sack back on it. To prepare the feed for going back into the section, take some 400 grit sandpaper and just rough up the tail of that feed. Gets a little bit of ebonite dust going. There we go, so it's all nice and sandy. Let's put the feed on the nib and line it up to where it should be, which is just about there. It was way up to here before. I'm just going to put it there and grip it with some rubber matting and grab the section with some rubber matting and see whether I can find the sweet spot. That's not too bad. Yeah, that's going in nicely. Yeah, that feels just about right. That's about where it was. Maybe a little bit further out. Yeah, just the top of that too is showing. So now we can put this back in the section just for now, and then dip that nib and see whether it writes okay. So here we go, some writing paper, and let's get out some Watermans. Just happens to go nicely with this pen. And let's dip it in the ink and see what we've got. I know so far this is a 1933 Waterman No. 3, and it has a 14 karat gold flexible nib. Now this is way too wet, way too wet. But you can probably see that it has an extreme amount of flex to it, and it's not too bad. It's got a lot of feedback. So I'm going to adjust those tines a little bit because they look like they're just slightly off, and they're slightly splayed out as well, as you can see. So I'm going to probably knock that nib and feed out of there again. Now that the feed is up against that nib, I might actually put the nib further in so the nib doesn't extend quite so much. I wonder if I can do that without removing it. Yeah, it's still pretty wide. So I'm going to knock that feed out of there again, and I'm going to adjust it outside of the pen and close up that gap a little bit, and then we'll reseat it again. So the way I'm doing this is by crossing those tines a little bit and squeezing it together, and then checking it, and then squeezing it together. It'll also help align those tines because this one is slightly higher than the other. So I'm closing down that gap and aligning the tines at the same time. I might have to straighten this one here with my nib pliers just to flatten it out a little bit. There, now I think I've got those tines together pretty well. and that gap has been reduced slightly. I think I might reduce it a little bit more. There. Now those tines are just about touching. You can see right there. They're just about touching, and they're aligned. So let's put it back in the pen again and give it a try. Here we go. Let's give this a try again. Dip some more ink. It's more writable than it was. I think I'll try to get that wetness down a little bit more. But it is certainly a lovely nib. And it needs a little bit of polish, I think. So I'll do some micro mesh on it, but I'm going to adjust it a little bit more to try to lower that, try to narrow that gap a little bit more to make it less wet. But we're really on the track to a really lovely pen. So I think I'll put this nib aside for now, and we can concentrate on polishing up that cap and barrel. So let's take a look at this barrel up here so we can see what it's going to look like when it's down below. And there's the cap on top, and we'll polish that up and see what it looks like when it's polished up down below and when that clip is adjusted a little bit. And here's the cap all polished up, looking brand new top to bottom. That cap ring came up beautifully, and I bent the clip back into place again so it's usable again. Just looks awesome. Here it is with the barrel, and that pen is looking brand new. Now that's all you need to do with this pen. To maintain it, just polish it with a jeweler's cloth. Don't put anything like Renaissance wax on this, as it's celluloid. The Renaissance wax actually seals in the off-gassing that generally celluloid does over its age. That's why celluloid kind of shrinks over its age, and cap bands get a little bit loose. But if you block that off-gassing of the celluloid, then it tends to discolor and harden the wax, and it becomes difficult to get that wax off again. So regular plastics and acrylics and things like that are okay with Renaissance wax, but not celluloid. So now we need to resack this pen, fill it with ink, and then give it a try. So the sack I'm using for this is a number 17 size sack, which is slightly larger than normal. 16s are generally what you find on most Watermans, but we'll stretch that latex up around that nipple and resack the pen. The 17 will fit in the barrel and give it a little bit of airspace around there, which is good so it doesn't stick to the inside of the barrel. This pen should actually have a good amount of ink. So the first thing I have to do before I resack the pen is get the remnants of that old sack off of that section. It looks like ebonite, it's not. There. It's all old latex, all shellacked on to that nipple of the section. So I'll peel that off camera and get that all nice and cleaned up. And there it is with all that old desiccated latex scraped off. And I sanded up that ebonite a little bit with some 400 grit. Gives it a nice surface for the new latex sack to purchase and glue onto, which we'll do next. Okay, so we're ready to resack this pen. We have to take our 17 size sack and size it properly. So if it's going to be on the nipple of the section, it comes to there, like that. And that part, when the nib is in the section all the way, that part comes to just about that last thread on the barrel. And if we put that there, you can see that the sack goes all the way to the bottom. And I don't want it to go all the way to the bottom, touch the bottom like that. So I'm going to bring it back just a bit, because I don't want it touching the inside of the barrel. It ends up adhering to it and sticking to it, and that's when the sack tears and you need to resack the pen. So I'm just going to take off a smidge. These are already long enough, so I'm just going to take off a little wee bit, maybe a couple of millimeters, just like that. We put it on our sack spreader. You can also use tweezers for this, or a paper clip if you don't have a sack spreader. There we go. And let's check to see where it comes to. That looks perfect. So there's the section right at the top of the barrel, and I've got about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom. So now we can pull that off of there. get out our shellacker pen from the inky nib and get the top off. There we go. And just paint a stripe of shellac around that nipple. We don't want it on the inside. And then we can put our sack on the sack spreader again. Oh, look at that. I got shellac all the way up onto the section. I'll have to polish that section out again. Put the cap back on my pen before an accident happens. And let's try to get this sack on here properly. Get it up under the lip there. And give it a little bit of a twist. And see whether some of that shellac got up on there. So I'm going to have to get that off. Yeah, that looks rather straight. Then I'm just going to paint a bead of shellac right around that seam just to prevent any leaks. And that shellac, when it's dry, I'm going to leave this dry for at least 12 hours here before I put it in the barrel. But that extra shellac right there, just on the back side of the tail of the section, will secure the section down into the barrel as well. Keep it from spinning and make the repair complete. So we'll set that aside, and when it dries, I'll put some talc on that latex to keep it from sticking to the inside of the barrel. And we will fill the pen and do another writing test. And here we are, it's the next day, and the shellac has completely dried. And we're going to put the section into the barrel, but we're going to apply a little bit of talc first, as latex likes to stick to itself. And we don't want that to happen inside the barrel. This is not just to get the sack into the barrel, it's to keep it for a long time from sticking to anything inside the barrel. Typically what it sticks to is that pressure bar that's in there. So we're going to put the talc aside and slide that into the barrel, and there's a little bit of dried shellac right there, which I did on purpose. I'm going to line up the lever with the nib, and I'm going to hold the section with some gripper mat, and the barrel, same thing, and push it all the way in. There we go. Now that's slightly offset, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a turn. It doesn't want to turn because of that shellac, so we're going to heat it up a little bit. And that will expand the barrel, the celluloid in that barrel a little bit, and allow me to turn it. There. You can feel it slide around. Yep. Slid too much. Perfect. There we go. Now we're going to get out the weigh scale, and I'm going to weigh the pen. 9.14 grams. Press tear. Get out some Watermans, and we're going to fill this pen by squeezing the lever, and we should get bubbles.
Hey, what's a bath without bubbles? Hey, Bubbles, come over here, will you? Well.
And there they are. Let the lever back, let it sit for a couple seconds, then squeeze again, let it sit. I'm going to do it a third time as the charm. Yeah, and no more bubbles. The trick is leaving it in the ink for several steamboats to allow that sack to inflate with ink. And 1.4 milliliters of ink. That's excellent. That's almost like a modern piston filler. So a Leonardo Momento Zero Grande takes 1.5 milliliters of ink. And this is a much slimmer pen. Number 17 size sack, very long, and it takes up a lot of ink. That's excellent. Now we'll get out our writing paper, and we see what we got again. 1933 Waterman's number 3 in black pearl. So let's measure our lines. There's the horizontal lines. There's the vertical lines with no pressure. Let's add some pressure here and see what kind of thickness we get. Certainly, it's a nicely vintage flex nib. I'm just going to get out my pad from Dominant Industries and check what that line width is. And that is 0.3, 0.25. 0.25. The vertical line is 0.4, and the thick line is 1.2. So from 0.25 on the horizontal to 0.4 on the vertical to 1.2 millimeters on the flex. That's a very versatile gold nib. And there's still a good deal of feedback. So I think I'll get out my micromesh and give it some polish with probably 8,000 and then 12,000 grit. in figure eights and so forth, just to polish out a little bit of that feedback. And then I'll come back with my thoughts about this resurrection. So what are my thoughts about this pen resurrection? Well, this one came up even better than I could have expected. It was kind of a grubby looking pen. When they're this old, they get a lot of micro scratches on them and the finish is dull. But once you polish it up, I mean, look at that. It looks brand new. Even the chrome plating on the Watermans is shining like brand new. There is a tiny scratch right there on the top of the clip, and a little bit that you can see with a magnifying glass of corrosion happening on that lever. But the cap band is in perfect shape, and that celluloid, that black pearl celluloid, is just glorious. What a beautiful pen. And the best part, of course, is this very flexible vintage 14 karat gold number 2 size nib that just writes like a dream. No pressure at all. And when you write with it, you write with it like it's a feather. It's just glorious. Yeah, 92 years ago, they knew how to make fountain pens, that's for sure. And if you're interested in purchasing this 1933 Waterman's number 3 lever fill fountain pen, I'm selling it for $180 US plus shipping. Just drop me an email at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address, and I'll get you a shipping quote and instructions on how to pay my PayPal. And you can have this beautiful fountain pen for the lucrative gift-giving season, or even just gift it to yourself. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And there's now an added benefit for those members that support me at the $5 level a month. You will now get 10% off your purchases of my vintage fountain pens. So patron members get 10% off. That basically gets you about free shipping, something like that. But I thought I'd give back some little perk for those of you that support me at a higher level. I very much appreciate it. That just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.
And as a little bonus to those of you who have stuck around to the bitter end of this video, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek unboxing of a vintage pen that just arrived as I finished recording the last segment of this video. So let's open it up and see what it is. I've got 3 or 4 or 5 things out ready to be delivered soon. And, there we go. And there we go. It's the green pearl. This is the emerald pearl, blue diamond clip, Parker Vacuumatic from the 1940s. This is 3rd generation. The imprint is very faint, but it says 2. So no dots and a 2. So that's the 4th quarter of 1942 for this pen. And it looks like a smaller size. So this one is, yeah, this is the smaller size, 4 3/4 inches, which makes it a debutante sized pen, not like the standard, but it has got the jeweler's band, which is very, very dark, and the gold clip, again, very, very dark. This is the way I like them, folks, because they polish up so beautifully. Yeah, tiny nib. And let's see what this one says, if any date code on it. It's just the Parker is showing, and the nib looks like it's in okay shape, not terrific shape, but just okay. And it is a 3rd generation plastic vac filler. Oh, it feels like there's a diaphragm in there. So there's a sneak preview for you. You'll be seeing this on Pen Resurrection Sunday some Sunday soon.